All right, y'all. Rank and File, Bitcoin podcast. Dom Bay here with Chris Alaimo. The Marshals can't find their Bitcoin. State strategic Bitcoin bills are getting
straight killed
by the hour and just smothered. Alaimo, we're going to go over the state of state today. How are you doing?
Doing well. I got my privacy stories on lock, so I'm excited to see all the bills that are
straight killed.
But let's get into it.
Yeah, let's jump in. We're going to bring up the map right now of the strategic reserve bills or anything that's Bitcoin related that is currently going on throughout the US. So here's the screen. You can see what we see right here. Lots of states have Bitcoin legislation. Shout out to whoever did the Bitcoin laws tracker. I'm not sure, but a pretty cool map here. Total measures 60 throughout 33 states, 31 SBRs introduced in 24 states, and 25 of those are live because, as you can see here, down the row here, we have Montana,
Killed.
North Dakota,
Killed.
Pennsylvania,
Killed.
South Dakota,
Killed.
and Wyoming.
Killed. That was a 4-for-1, dog.
So those have been killed off. RIP to those bills. We still have a lot on the table. I want to start off by talking about Georgia because Georgia has two bills in the works right here. You can see the mouse here. 228 is the Democrat Party bill for state depositories, which is a little different than 178, which is mostly Republican backed. So that's an interesting development out of Georgia. You have two bills. Bitcoin is bipartisan. There's a couple out of Florida. Arizona is stacked. There's like 5 bills here currently being considered. And it looks like in the front runners in the race, Utah up there, man, they are close, sitting in that second chamber waiting for enactment and approval. And of course, another one that is not as far ahead, but Texas, I think they have a good chance due to the adoption happening in the state. Who do you think, Alaimo, is going to be first, if any, to the Bitcoin law finish line? This is like we had the Cointucky Derby. This is the State Tucky Derby of the SBR bills. Who do you think is going to win the race?
I mean, if you told me like 6 months ago, I definitely would have said Wyoming, but that was one of the ones that was killed, right? In the end there. I guess Utah is probably the most likely candidate. I know Nico had a good conversation with Senator Cynthia Lummis and Dennis Porter, and they talked about Utah being probably the front runner for states. So if I had to go to it today, I'd say Utah probably is the best shot.
You're going to go. We got to get Joe Carlasari, who once again is a no-show, no-call for the Rank and File Bitcoin podcast. We're going to get a hold of him, though, make sure he's not turning into an elitist. Yeah, Utah looks good. I don't know too much about the details in the state. I think they only have here, it's looking like one bill. Where's the old Utah? Yeah, it looks like they have one blockchain and digital innovation amendment. So I don't know the depth. You hear some people say that are these Bitcoin on the treasury bills? Not sure, but they definitely are the front runners. I don't know. You know how I feel about this, Alaimo. I think that it's an interesting and ambitious take to try to put Bitcoin on a state balance sheet when a majority of the stakeholders in a state may not hold Bitcoin themselves. So your municipalities, your groups, your organizations, your unions, your pension funds, your companies, business, industry, if they're not holding Bitcoin, very tough for a state to hold Bitcoin and go through the roller coaster. We see it right now. Marshals can't find the Bitcoin. The U.S. Marshals are like, I don't know. We had this thing on a little single sig, maybe on a piece of paper in a drawer. Who knows what the hell's going on there? Looks like Bybit is kind of navigating their hack that they went through, but it's no easy task to hold Bitcoin, given that there's a lot of misinformation and things that get attached to Bitcoin that don't have to do with Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a shame. I know Odell always says this, like, if you can raise a kid, if you can drive a car, if you can graduate high school, nothing against people that don't graduate high school, but if you do any of these things, you can hold your own Bitcoin. It's easy as, keeping 12 words on a piece of paper and keeping it safe. I think the thing that people don't grapple with Bitcoin is that the seed phrase or your private keys or the 12 words are the Bitcoin, that like they don't meet the level of severity with it. Like I think they're just like, oh, it's 12 words, if I lose it, if whatever, like I can figure it out. But no, it's really about keeping this private, off prying eyes, away from online. Don't take a picture of it, don't store it in your Apple Notes. That actually leads me to my next story. Dom, you want me to go into it?
Yeah, I was going to say it's as easy as verifying your Bitcoin Core no download with PGP verifier and trying to use terminal and navigating that. That's as easy as 1, 2, 3. What do you got for us off the news desk, man?
Yeah, so Apple. So we've been talking about this. They've been a long drawn out battle with the UK and the EU. So Apple is unfortunately pulling their end to end encryption for iCloud in the UK. This boots over 135,000 non compliant apps from the EU App Store. So this comes back and forth with the EU, and the UK was saying that they need backdoor encryption into everyone's iCloud backups. And Apple, has historically been a staunch privacy advocate. There were stories from even 2015, 2016, where the U.S. authorities were asking them to hack into a terrorist phone, and Apple said no, we're not doing that. They're like, can you? And Apple, like, it was unclear whether they could or they couldn't, but basically said they were not going to assist the authorities in helping break into someone's phone. This is a real shame because this harms the everyday person, the everyday worker, as the saying goes from the cypherpunks. Privacy is not secrecy. You're not in a free society if you do not have the ability to remain private. Privacy is the ability to selectively reveal yourself to the world. So it's a real shame. This comes after the EU's Digital Service Act, and there was a huge pushback. And a quote from Apple. Apple has removed the advanced data protection tool for new customers in the UK after the government demanded backdoors access to encrypted user data. Apple can no longer offer ADP in the United Kingdom. New users and current UK users will eventually be disabled from this security feature, the Apple spokesperson said. As of today, apps without the trader status have been removed from the App Store in the EU after trader is verified by the Apple Store. There was, I forget what it was. Apple basically came out and said, this is a shame. It's a sad day that they have to do this, it's true. It's basically like authoritarian governments and conglomerates pushing to basically see what you and your family are doing. You can't have a free society without privacy. So it's a real shame. Any thoughts there, Dom?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it all the time. The privacy attacks are going to continue. Obviously, the holy grail of data, right? They have tons of stuff on demographics. They have voter data, which is all stored and shared. They have consumer data, which they can get through the Amazons of the world. But once you get that money data, as far as everyone's like purchasing habits, not just on Amazon or some online marketplace, but basically in everything they do, you have a pretty good idea from, email databases to Facebook, Meta, Amazon, what everyone is doing at all times. And so again, it goes back to what you said with the quote there. Privacy isn't secrecy. I think I'm probably butchering that, but we do have a right to privacy, and it doesn't mean that something shady is going on. That kind of There
Yeah.
was an interesting X post from Daniel Batten. I don't know if you saw it,
No, I
but he
didn't.
said those most threatened by Bitcoin have worked out. They cannot kill it. Their next, much more lethal strategy is to encourage Bitcoiners to settle for it being a store of value, which doesn't threaten them, not money, which does threaten them. It ties in directly to this concept of we want to know what you're doing, who you're doing it with at all times. And Bitcoin obviously offers a layer where you can see with full transparency what an address is doing, but people have the ability to disassociate themselves from their address. So yeah, I mean that kind of lines up with Apple's latest move and why Apple may not be getting into something like Bitcoin.
Yeah, and one last thing. Apple expressed grave disappointment over this decision, stating it will make UK users more vulnerable to data breaches and other security threats. I can segue to the next story. So, speaking of security threats, Citadel Securities. If this doesn't ring a bell, Dom, I know you're like, Citadel Securities. I kind of remember something about this. Ken Griffin of Citadel Securities, GameStop, Citadel Securities. For those that don't know, remember the GameStop fiasco in 2021, where GameStop's price was soaring as Wall Street Bets was obviously putting a ton of money into buying the stock. You know, the stock was sold short by hedge funds, Citadel Securities by Ken Griffin being one of them, along with other large Wall Street funds. And there was kind of the push and pull of the retail, the everyday worker, the everyday man fighting up against the hedge funds. And, you know, just when you thought that the little guy was going to win, they changed the rules. They, you know, changed it on Robinhood, the famous trading app, or that you were no longer allowed to buy GameStop. I know producer Jacob, you know, that's part of the way that led him into Bitcoin. So I'm actually thankful for that. But basically, they got rid of the buy button. You could only sell. And basically, it was a way of helping alleviate the pressure and let some of the hedge funds out of their trade and unwind their trade. I say all of this because Citadel Securities, the $65 billion hedge fund, wants to get into the liquidity provider for Bitcoin and crypto. I know we're not a crypto podcast here, but basically they're betting on President Trump's embrace of the industry. I'm just saying, like, when you do a deal with the devil or the snakes of the industry, you know, it's not always in your favorable terms. So as Dom and I always say in the show, not your keys, not your coins. You know, you want to self-custody your Bitcoin. I've been sounding the alarm for a couple of years now with the ETFs, the Bitcoin ETFs. Yeah, it's great to have price action accordance with the price action of Bitcoin in an ETF form. It's great. It's great for everyone there. But let's just say you are warned that, you know, you might get caught offsides, and the Wall Street banks, you know, they might do some shifty things or change the rules on you. So if you don't hold Bitcoin your own self-custody with your own 12 words, 24 words, you don't actually own the Bitcoin, you own an IOU, and that's a dangerous spot to be. Dom, thoughts there?
Yeah, Citadel, that was the one with the meme where the guys are carrying the coffin.
Yep.
And GameStop's ripping, and the coffin has like the different names, but Citadel was one of the big names on there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know. This ties in, I guess, to the rumors. You know, you saw GameStop, the CEO and Saylor, right? Wasn't he the CEO? They were
Ryan Cohen and Michael Saylor were together.
Yeah, so there's some conversation, but hopefully GameStop can, you know, do something with Bitcoin, and we may see another showdown. Who knows what's going to happen? To your point about the custodians, look, we don't badmouth the ETF, and because for some people it may be something that works for them, and you would hope that the BlackRocks of the world are going to be good custodians. But with any third party, things happen, and you don't, that's not in your control. Same with MicroStrategy. We saw in the news today that MicroStrategy is just 94 Bitcoin away from owning 500,000 Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And Saylor's really accelerated that accumulation. We talked last episode about if you were going to try to do a strategic reserve, you would use MicroStrategy in some form. We don't know if that's possible. Joe Carlasari is not here, so he can't tell us, Dom, that's not possible. The federal, you know, the Fed could never own MicroStrategy's Bitcoin. I don't know. But anytime you have a third party involved, you open the door to what may happen to that third party. Not your keys, not your coin. It may be a nightmare. I may be sweating bullets trying to verify an email with PGP. I'm trying to update a node. I'm dealing with like words and all that. But at the end of the day, you know, you live or die by your own actions. And it's much easier to, you know, rest your head if you make a mistake versus someone that doesn't have your best interest in mind, that just says, well, it's not a mistake, but between my Bitcoin and Chris Alaimo's, I'm going to pick Chris to lose his, not mine. So, yeah, you know, there's some third party stuff, but 94 away for Saylor,
904 away, but
904. Geez, gosh, good correction there. Do you think behind the scenes, how upset was Saylor that they couldn't close that gap in this last one, or is he trying to leave a little cliffhanger suspense and go smash by 904?
He was freaking out. He's like, we might not get that last 904. It might go away from us. But yeah, that was actually my next story. So Dom hit it nail on the head.
Beat you to it, brother. Beat you to it.
Strategy or MicroStrategy buys another 20,356 Bitcoin for $2 billion. MicroStrategy or Michael Saylor's Strategy. Sorry, I'm going to keep messing that up for the next year. Strategy now owns 499 Bitcoin and 96 Bitcoin worth over 47.6 billion US dollars. And then final story, last Friday it was announced that Michael Saylor met up with the SEC's crypto task force, according to Fox Business. So Saylor's pumping his bags, trying to get that 500,000 Bitcoin, owning almost 1/20th of the entire Bitcoin network, which is just crazy when you think about it. I know that he had this strategy, ironically, probably 6 months ago that they said they were going to buy $21 billion worth of Bitcoin via stock via sale of debt, as well as equity buyback or convertible debt notes. So he wanted to buy $42 billion worth of Bitcoin, and he was already burning through a lot of it very quickly. So Dom, what are your thoughts? Meeting with the SEC, buying a ton of Bitcoin. Michael Saylor and Strategy look like they're staying strong.
Yeah, he's holding strong. He just posted an hour ago, Bitcoin is on sale. I think I feel cool with that. Although, it's like, all right. Yeah. I don't know. Who knows what's going on? You just, you learn about Bitcoin, you accumulate what you can, and the price action. There's so much stuff going on. I had a buddy ask me, well, why is the price dropping? I think we hit 90 or under 91 today. And there's a lot of stuff going on. You have the Bybit or the BitBuy. That was no small cookie right there. That was $1 billion that got snatched. That always gets linked to Bitcoin, even though it was Ethereum that was stolen. It's just the whole industry gets looped in. Different traders. We know we have institutional money moving money in and out of Bitcoin. Again, the marshals, they seem to fumbled a few billion in, I don't know, they can't find the Bitcoin. They're trying to figure out if Fort Knox, if the gold is there. It's crazy right now.
Yeah, and Bitcoin's normally a leading indicator as well. Bitcoin and gold, not to give gold some props as well, but the market's down right now. Bitcoin's dropping first. Like as we say this, it's at $91,000 per Bitcoin. But even though Bitcoin's the first one to move or fall, when people are looking for liquidity, it's not you sell what you want, you sell what you can. And since Bitcoin is liquid 24/7, it's the easiest thing to sell at any given time, at any given country. As long as you have an internet connection, or even if you just have radio, you can sell the Bitcoin. So a big part of it is that they are selling it and trying to cover their trades. If they're short or if something's going on, you're selling your Bitcoin in order to cover your costs or your liabilities.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Things move quick, things bounce back, they dip. There's a lot of stuff. It's very hard to pinpoint one source for what moves the price. But got to just keep holding the line, keep learning. It'll be interesting to see back to the States where we started. Uh, we've been working on a bill, and I've been talking to you about it, which focuses more on municipalities. And I'm a big believer in this, that, a state is going to have a hard time holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet if cities don't want to do it. I mean, does that make sense, right? Like you're Chris Alaimo's the governor in New Jersey, and you go, here, we need this thing, and not one city in your state holds Bitcoin on the balance sheet. The cities that pay the revenues, that pay the pension system, that pay the taxes. In fact, in some states, it's prohibited for cities to invest in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. So again, it's very ambitious, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think we all expected a lot of turbulence in the beginning of this administration. There's tariffs flying around. South Korea just dropped their rates by, I think, a quarter point. Everyone's positioning, trying to get in position, and it seems, on one given day, Bitcoin's taking a dive, and it's like, what the hell's going on? Bills are getting kilt in the state left and right. They're dropping like flies as far as the Bitcoin strategic reserve. Then all of a sudden, maybe the marshals find the Bitcoin, maybe the US reserve happens, and people are going nuts. This is just the way things are working right now, because even though Bitcoin's been around for quite some time, it's still very new, and a lot of people are just entering that ecosystem.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. I agree with you, Dom. I know Preston Pish. I forget who he was talking to, but in his latest podcast, he was talking about municipalities and municipalities and cities leading up to states. And it was an interesting thing that was brought up in the 2024 Nashville conference. RFK and Senator Cynthia Lummis were talking about Bitcoin bonds. So Bitcoin bonds that are backed by Bitcoin. So bond, just in layman's terms for everyone, is just a contract that if Dom were to give me $100 and I promise to give him $105, as returns, I'm giving a 5% yield on that $100 every year. So, he gives me $100 and then it's a 10-year contract. I give him $105, $5 this year, $5 this year, $5 this year until the year 10. And then he returns the bond coupon itself. And then when he does that, I give him the final $100. So he's getting a $5 return every year for 10 years. And then I give him the $100 of the initial investment that he has. So there was talks in Nashville of doing a Bitcoin bond. So you do 90, let's just say Dom, same $100. Dom gives me $100 and it's a 1% back Bitcoin bond, meaning that I go into the market and I give him $99, or he gives me $99. I keep that in fiat. And then I say I'm going to return him $5 every year. And then a 1% that I immediately go into the market and buy Bitcoin. So I buy $1 worth of Bitcoin now. It's a 10-year bond. Let's use the same example. I have $99 and then I have to give him $5 back every year. And then at the end of it, I owe him not just the principal on the bond or the bond coupon, I would also owe him the amount of Bitcoin that was on there. So this is exactly kind of what MicroStrategy is doing. They're doing convertible debt notes, which is more about equity, but they have done debt offerings with exactly like that. And they're the best performing bonds. They were even subscribing at 0%. So meaning that Dom gives me $100 and I'm promising over time to give him whatever the Bitcoin return is on top of that. So Dom's point, municipalities or cities, as of right now, they don't have Bitcoin on their balance sheet, but maybe in the event that like, hey, no one is buying our munis or no one's buying our city bonds. But if you're like, hey, we see a lot of the kids, millennials, Gen X, Zoomers, they like this cryptocurrency or this Bitcoin stuff. What if we do a bond backed with Bitcoin and then it's oversubscribed? So basically all a bond offering is debt. So the city is like, hey, we want to build a new bridge. We want to build a new library. We need to fix up the roads. We need to offer people something to give us money. We will give them a return over time, aside from fixing or doing whatever we do with the money. But to entice people to come into the trade, they might do Bitcoin backed bonds, which would be fascinating because that's a kind of a win-win. It's not like, hey, we're taking money that we collect in taxes and we're just putting in Bitcoin. Some people or the residents might be like, hey, well, we don't want to do that. But if you're saying as an investor, hey, buy this bond with a promise of a fiat return, so you kind of like meet your criteria. It's a bond, which also meets pension fund criteria, and you get exposure to Bitcoin. It's a win-win-win. You're raising money for the city or municipality. You are enticing investors to come in, and it meets their criteria because a lot of times they just can't buy equities. They can't buy Apple stock. They can't just buy Microsoft stock, hold on to it 5 years, and then use the returns to pay off things. They need to issue a bond or a debt instrument for pension funds or hedge funds or all these things to meet their mandates. And then you get exposure to the Bitcoin as well. So I think this is a win-win-win. I think kind of like what Dom was saying, I don't think it's going to be top down from President Trump or from your governor of your state. It's going to be a municipality or a city that has a need to raise money and they either can't because they're in dire straits or just because they're like, hey, these have been very successful in the private sector with MicroStrategy or Semler Scientific or Metaplanet. Name the company here. Maybe we should try this in a municipality as the treasury to get money into our economy to fix things up locally, and then we offer people the Bitcoin back. I know there's a lot more logistics on protecting the Bitcoin. You'd hate to be like Bybit and lose the Bitcoin keys. Then the municipality has to go out and buy Bitcoin at the higher price. There's a whole bunch of logistics. You could obviously use companies like Casa or Unchained to protect yourself do a multi-sig to coordinate so that way no one can steal it. But I think that this is going to be a very interesting thing over the next 5, 10, 15 years, Dom. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, this is absolutely huge what you're talking about, and I encourage the listeners to really go back and listen to everything you just laid out because, again, municipalities are in a large way held hostage by this massive M2 money supply, explosion that we've seen, which is unprecedented, right? All those charts where it says, the money supply has been boosted by whatever percent just in the last 5 to 10 years. unbelievable, right? So when that happens, we've seen the inflation, and we're seeing conservative numbers, even conservative numbers, 3% inflation is the new 2%. Well, if there's a contract for your workers, they're not going to settle for a 2% raise, but yet the city may not have been making revenues to keep up with that. They're going to have to eat that loss. And so, really, we all know that money moves in a very complex manner, and that a very few people control the flow of money, where it's going to go, how it's going to move. And cities, definitely, they're not in that group. Like, sorry to say, your mayors are not at the top of the top making these massive decisions for the global economy. So they may be on the losing end on the way money moves, but yet their obligations remain unchanged. They have to pay their workers, and they can't give them a pay cut. So that's, in a 3-year contract, they have to give 10% raises. That's a huge cost. If their revenues don't match that ability, just because money supply is going up, doesn't mean necessarily that more people are spending money in that city and that the revenues are going up. That correlation may not be the same. So they have to think of ways to generate revenue, dormant revenue. And like you said, whether it's stocks and things like that, they're limited in their capacity. And I truly believe, let cities decide for themselves what they're going to do. So for a lot of these, look here, we're back here. I'm going to pull back up this screen with the Bitcoin laws. And for all these states, if you're in one of these states, whether it's orange or black, I think that these legislators should be focused on opening the door for organizations and cities to explore and learn about Bitcoin and see if they want to hold it themselves. Because again, I think these lines right here, these states that have different bills in the pipeline, they're going to end up in the kilt category right here, because when they turn behind them and take a look, no one has adopted Bitcoin yet, except for individuals, which we know. And one of the states not on here, which I talk about all the time, is California, which has one of the largest constituencies of Bitcoin holders. They did Coinbase did a study, and they did a polling, and California is home to, I think they're number one for the most people per capita, right, holding Bitcoin or digital assets. Will open up the doors for cities to explore that and learn about it. That's a much more digestible and a no-cost bill to pursue, and there's a good chance it's going to pass, because, again, we all were shocked when, they mentioned the strategic reserve for the US. That's even crazier, right? Imagine the US holding Bitcoin when no states hold Bitcoin. So I know there's this state versus US, the race to see who holds Bitcoin first. Hey, I hope some of them get through, the Utahs of the world. Texas obviously has some good adoption going on, but to other states that have, had their bills shot down on this, find a way to introduce a bill that opens the door for municipalities to take an education-based approach to Bitcoin, learn about it, see if they want to hold it or not. That's going to be a lot more successful. So I know we promised we were going to keep it 20 minutes, but dang, Alaimo, when we get rolling, we get rolling.
Yeah.
And there's tons of stuff. U.S. Marshals out there, please find the Bitcoin that was confiscated. Maybe Ross can help them with that. Maybe Ross goes, hey, I'll help you guys find it.
10% finder's fee,
Yeah. Until then, continue to learn about self-custody, learn Bitcoin. Don't take financial advice from everyone. Do your own homework. Don't try to win the lottery. This is a long play. This is for the next generation, and learn about Bitcoin, which is, as Saylor said at CPAC, the strongest decentralized digital computer network on planet Earth. So learn about it, find it. That's all I got for today, Alaimo. You got anything else to bring us home?
No, I'm good. Stay humble, stack sats. As Sailor says, Bitcoin, it's an opportunity to buy here. So
that's it. If Jersey Mike's is listening, please sponsor us, because we're trying to get subs. And if you're not Jersey Mike's or you don't have a contact there, maybe just give us a sub. We're going to keep bringing the signal, but a sub is always good. We're close to 100, Alaimo. We're at 95, so we're on our way.
We're on our way. All right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
All right.
Peace.
Later.